think we might be live.
Excellent.
Yeah, we've received some feedback that we talk about tea too much, so we'll save tea talk for tea time. And
so let's talk about the fireplace. No, I'm just kidding.
Instead discuss the fire.
I'm just kidding. No, we just want to make sure that it's that we don't launch into the discussion before people are actually on, to give you guys a chance. Anyway, without, mumbling on, let's say good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone out there. So we're still going through this kind of situation.
Global situation.
Yep. And you're probably keeping abreast of the news and everything that's going on. But we're here today to talk to you about some other ways of keeping your brain sharp and engaged. And that'll help us also lower the stress and the anxiety that we might feel at this time, because a lot of people are feeling anxious, nervous, distracted. I mean, raise your hand right now at home. We can't see you. If you felt distracted these last few days, weeks.
For sure, yeah. We actually have some family in New York, New York City, and a lot of places are having a tough time. New York is having one of the toughest times.
Yeah.
And it is very distracting. There's no question about it. Yeah.
And, we lived there, grew up there. Once a New Yorker, always a New Yorker, and so our heart really goes out, and we're keeping apprised of everything that's going on there. But we can get through this, and we just have to remember to keep things in perspective. You found a very interesting fact about the plague.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
This obviously is not the plague, but it kind of feels that way to some of us. And what was fascinating was how much productive activity took place in history during periods like this, when people were sort of forced to self-isolate.
Right.
And one of the cool ones, this is from Cal Newport.
Okay.
Who picked this up, and he picked it up from someone else.
Cal Newport he's a professor, and he's an author of a few really well-known books. The newest one he has out is Deep Work.
I think he might have you might be right. I think he came out with something else after that.
Yes, and
the one I love the most.
Right now,
the one I've read, let's just say.
Digital minimalism.
That's it.
Yeah. Digital minimalism. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Which we might have mentioned in some of our previous material. He does great work, and he's all about being sort of, what's the word? Distilling productivity from peace, right?
Yeah.
From learn, or maybe that's not the right way to say it. I would say it's leveraging leveraging mental stillness.
Yeah.
To be productive.
Right.
To derive productivity. Yeah.
To enter flow state and to really be able to hone in on something and focus on it, despite the noise, despite distractions that you might encounter, be it digital notifications or just being distracted with other thoughts that you might be having, right? Which I think is really it's the situation that a lot of people are going through at this present time. Not just like the notifications that we get on our devices, but more so thinking about other things.
Well, that's it. Right now you have kind of a double whammy. One, our devices and our media channels are pumping us full of information, as they normally do. But what makes this particularly challenging is we're in a situation now where we're isolated from everything else.
Right.
So not only is the stream of information the same, if not increasing, our focus has been narrowed to that, those channels.
Yeah.
Right? As opposed to normally you can go outside and you can see other people
see friends,
do stuff you like to do, activities you enjoy.
Basketball.
At this point, the scope of what we can do has been dramatically narrowed, and that increases the percentage of our attention that these media outlets have. It's great for them,
but not so good
for your brain.
For our mental health and for our brain.
Yeah.
And so, anxiety starts to creepily increase, I guess, right? Is
Yeah.
for many people.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that this is the case for everyone.
No, I mean, look, I don't think of myself as an anxious person.
No, you're not.
But even I, over the past few weeks, have felt this sense of disquiet, right? Unease, and it caused. We've talked about this before, but it's my temper's a little shorter than it should be, and I don't get as great sleep. We track our sleep very closely, so I have we both have rings and wristbands and smart beds, the whole shebang. So we have a pretty good sense of how we're sleeping day to day, and there's no question during this period sleep's gone down.
And you can attribute that to increased stress levels, right? Even if you might not feel it, maybe you're not impacted in any way, and that's great. But I think the reality is as we discussed in previous live streams, that what we're seeing is that how interconnected we are. Something that's from all the way on the other side of the world is now affecting us, right? And I think that's really important to, it's always been that case. It's just that we weren't really prepared or willing.
Cognizant of it.
Exactly.
Appreciative of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's both sides, the good and the bad. And I think now we're really understanding, wow, well, we're really all in this together. We're all the same, despite anything else, we're all humans, right? And
we have the same fears, we have the same needs.
Yeah.
So on and so forth. So I haven't forgotten Cal Newport yet.
Okay.
The reason he came up is because it has a lot to do with the topic of today, which is keeping your mind sharp during social isolation. And there are some really impressive feats that were accomplished during periods like this. And the one that Cal Newport brought up was Isaac Newton.
Oh, yeah.
He was, at the time, I think, going to a very prestigious university. I can't remember which. But anyway, the plague happened, as it does. And so he, had to take some time off, I think he went to his uncle's house or something. And while he was away, he brought his notebook. He always liked to take notes in his notebook. And it was a mostly empty notebook. And notebooks back then were kind of a big deal, if you think about it.
Yeah.
Books were hard to come by because the physical materials of a book
paper
were tough.
and then binding it together.
Right, exactly.
With leather and all of this.
Right. So, they weren't just some discarded item that a lot of us, I think, treat notebooks as these days.
Well, it depends on who you ask. I love notebooks.
She preserves hers very, very, very well. So, in any event, he takes this notebook and he starts filling it with math problems, and that he tries to solve.
Yeah.
And so he's trying to challenge himself, and these get increasingly complex. And eventually, what he ends up doing is creating the foundation for calculus in his notebook, right? Which in turn has laid a foundation for all forms of complex mathematics and physics, and has enabled us, frankly, to have this conversation with you over the internet.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
It all comes back to little epiphanies and discoveries like this that would probably never have happened, or at least not on this timeline.
The same timeline, exactly.
If
he hadn't been faced
something
with that
terrible like the plague
adversity
hadn't hit.
Yeah, and during the same time period, Shakespeare.
Not during the same time period.
Well, no, but during the same, because the plague was for 15 years.
Well, there were multiple bouts of plagues.
Right. So when in one of the resurgences of the plague, in the 1600s, I think it was, Shakespeare wrote 3 of his most famous plays during that time. One of which was, I think it was maybe Macbeth, Hamlet. Anyway, I'll have to fact check. But 3 of them.
That makes sense. Those are both intense.
I know. Oh yeah, totally.
It's hard to write a comedy in the.
I know.
Oh, maybe not. I don't know.
Well, who knows? Maybe.
He's a talented man, that Shakespeare.
Add some levity. We still don't know who he actually was.
Right. I said man, but I think there was even.
I know, that's why.
Concepts that it might be a woman.
Yeah.
In any event, yeah, a lot of
the
really
point
powerful
here
things
is
happen.
Right, and so you don't. Yes, there could be so much going on around you, all these distractions. If we can try really hard to quiet the noise and just search within ourselves to figure out, well, what do we like to do? Explore our curiosities and things that we would like to discover and learn, then we might be able to rise to our potential of creating something really cool.
Yeah.
And it's not like it has to be published or anything. Like
totally.
But you might be the next Shakespeare.
And I think a misconception people have about keeping your mind active is that you need a lot of input. And this is also from Cal Newport. Again, I view him as the preeminent resource on understanding productivity out of stillness. And he made a really good point, which is that, and this was a quote, I think, from maybe Benjamin Franklin or Winston Churchill, I can't remember. But the concept is that more input does not mean more output, right?
That's interesting, yeah.
And so we have a propensity these days for inundating ourselves with information. I certainly do. I can speak for myself. Blasting my podcasts and reading as much as I could possibly fit in my brain. And that's great for building a base of knowledge. But that doesn't necessarily mean your brain is active.
And it's
right?
also not a prerequisite for creation. Like, I think when you're writing a research paper, right, you need to do the due diligence of figuring out we call it, literature review, where you're looking at all the sources that exist on that topic and then finding the gaps, right? In that, you do have to amass a lot of information because you're trying to add to the body of knowledge. But if you're trying to create maybe something new or novel, or just let your creativity, soar, 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 it's another, thing entirely to just you don't have to necessarily, I think what you're saying, right, get all that input in order to have output.
Yes,
right?
and exactly. That's exactly it. And creativity is one form of brain activity.
Totally.
The point that Cal Newport was making was exactly what you just said, which is about creativity.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of this actually even broader.
Okay, yeah.
Which is brain activity in general. When you take in information, when I'm listening to a podcast, right?
You're processing it.
I'm processing it, but your brain is in a state of passivity, in a sense, right? Because it's in the mode of listening.
Receiving information.
But, right.
Yeah.
It's very hard to use other parts of your brain when you're getting the information coming to you.
You mean like multitask?
Yeah, well, multitasking would be an example of using sort of different parts of your brain at the same time. So whether it's creativity, whether it's just getting stuff done that you plan to get done, if you're constantly taking in, it's hard to put out. And so I think creativity is probably where it manifests the most obviously.
Yeah.
But I think also just if you have a lot of to-dos, a lot of stuff to get done and you're feeling pressured about that, if you're also pumping yourself full of information at the same time, it can probably raise your anxiety levels more because your brain needs space to be productive, whether it's creative or just efficient in getting stuff that you need to get done, routine stuff. Your brain really benefits from having that space and stillness.
Definitely. And I think I've seen just in the last week a lot of articles about how we shouldn't be getting upset at the fact that some of us might not be able to be productive in the traditional sense, like let's say, going through your to-do list and that kind of thing, just because of what's the current reality, and so we have to, I think, just be patient with ourselves and help ourselves kind of get over that hump of distress that comes from
I love that.
Everything.
Being patient with yourself. That's
so
important.
Yeah. It's so much easier said than done, but in my mind, what does that patience look like? So let's say, you have some deliverables. Definitely get to those, but maybe in between, right, to make yourself more productive and, not, because sometimes because we know we have to be productive, we get stressed about trying to be productive. So we'll be I need to be productive, and here I am stressing out about that. Oh, I can't get any work done right now because anyway, it just goes on and on and on, that negative feedback loop, right? So if you just take a minute or two, or even I don't know, like break up your day with some other activities. Like for me, and I'm not the only one, like Tony Robbins also has talked about this, and like Tim Ferriss and many people talk about like adding a workout into your day, and it doesn't even have to be like a full-fledged workout, but just doing some like jumping jacks can help you kind of set that restart button so that you can attack something like productive wise.
Totally. I mean, there's no question that physical activity in general can help reset your mindset, your mind state.
Yeah.
Because it's the brain is a funny thing, and we obviously don't understand it that well. But
yeah, it's true.
But what we do know is that when you get blood and oxygen to your brain, it functions more effectively.
Yeah.
And when you're still, you're not getting as much blood and oxygen to your brain. And because of that, you have lower productivity. This is, I'm basically getting at if you're sitting at a desk.
Or standing at a desk.
Or standing, even standing. Standing, you tend to move around a little more, but it's still.
Yeah.
The point is, if you're stationary for an extended period of time, you're not getting that flow to the brain the way you need. And so
you want to pump some oxygen.
By just moving around, stretching, just getting yourself out of that static position.
Yeah. Or you could turn on some music and just be goofy for a little bit. Like if you don't necessarily like exercise, like in the traditional sense, you could do something else, which is, I mean, dance is a form of exercise.
Absolutely. My favorite thing to do lately has been I'll flip on one of my favorite songs.
Yeah.
You don't want to see me dance, but I start dancing.
Oh, you're cute when you dance.
And it's great. I'm by myself, no big deal.
I might pop my head in.
Yeah, every now and then she'll pop her head in. She's a very encouraging wife. But the point is, that's a terrific way. Just get goofy, get moving,
loose,
right? Your body responds very well to it.
Yeah.
And once the blood's going again, you would think that it would distract you, and suddenly you'd be
out of your
your zone.
Yeah.
The very opposite happens. Instead, you come back with renewed focus and fresh ideas.
Yeah.
It's incredible. I really like that, and brain activity in general. What's more important than getting the blood and oxygen in your brain to allow that activity to take place?
Yeah, and so you can definitely consider that, and just do it at the beginning of your day, or even like piecemeal throughout the day.
Yeah.
Right. Let's say you even have like a formal 30-minute workout. You can just do it like 10 minutes 3 times a day.
Yeah, I would even argue that doing it at intermittent intervals throughout the day is more important than one block of exercise at one point in the day.
I think so too.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, one is
right now for what we're talking about.
Right. If you're getting into fitness training and sort of VO2 max and so forth. Yeah, sure. You want a concentrated period of high intensity exercise. But in terms of brain power and optimal brain functionality, in addition to high intensity exercise, you want consistent, repetitive, low intensity exercise throughout the day. And our point is, exercise is a very big word
a loose term
for what we really mean, which is just moving around, changing the scenery a little bit.
Yeah, there was a Frenchman in, where was it? I want to say Toulouse. Anyway, some part of France. And I can't remember where it was. But he managed to run the marathon on his balcony. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, a couple weeks ago.
Oh, are you serious?
I'm serious, yeah.
So he just started jogging in place.
I think he had maybe like the width of maybe like the fireplace.
Right. I'm in like a New York mindset where your balcony is basically
if you
a
have
little
a
box. If you have a balcony. Yeah.
So I think the point was, the point is that you can really make lemonade out of any lemon kind of thing.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Just even if you were to jog in place,
you might surprise yourself at what's possible if you really set your mind to it. A lot of people, I think, right now are telling themselves,
I can't work out.
I can't work out. It's not possible. I don't have the space.
Like, a yoga mat, exercise clothes, sneakers.
I've heard I don't have the time.
Right. Oh, that's
right. But it's like, by definition, you have the time because you're doing a lot less outside than you were before. So you have more time. You may not have a ton of space, But I can tell you, and I think we mentioned this in last week's live, we did our Nike Training Club workouts, great app.
This is not an ad.
This is not an ad. In a very, very constricted space. I mean, basically, imagine a couch, an area for walking, right, a coffee table, then a thin area where you can sort of walk, maybe 2 people abreast, and then the TV. In that little alley, we did a full range of workouts.
Yeah. So you can get creative with, and what's cool about these apps, most of them are designed for small spaces. Basically, just the width of a mat, length and width of a mat.
Yep.
But other things that you can do is also sort of get out of your own head by maybe like planning a vacation, and you can actually take that vacation and look at these National Geographic images.
A virtual vacation.
A virtual vacation, yeah. So you can plan an actual vacation that you might take later on by yourself, with friends, or with your family, and then you can also take an actual virtual. Those are like oxymoronic, but vacation, and you can look up a YouTube video about that place, and it really does feel like you've been there.
Read up on the history a little bit, right?
Yeah. That's also a fun way to sort of press the reset button and get out of your the whirlwind of the negativity that's happening, kind of.
And it's also, I think, activities like that are great. The reality is, some people are sick right now. Right? People who aren't able to do exercise in the moment, get that. And that's an example of other ways to sort of give your brain some activity.
Yeah, and not ruminate over being sick,
right.
Because that's probably the last thing you want to be doing, is like constantly reminding yourself how you're not well. Because if you start thinking about how you will get well, there's a lot of the psychosomatic, it's extraordinary how much of like the mind-body connection we are unaware of. You know what I mean? So not to go completely off topic here, if what we're basically helping you understand, I think, and helping us like remind ourselves, is that the mind is so powerful, and we have to keep it sharp even in these times of distress and
well,
anxiety.
Especially in these times.
Yeah.
Because you rely on that to keep a level head. And to keep up what's important, right? For a lot of people, for us, honestly, we have it very easy. It's just the 2 of us here. We're in good health at the moment, knocking on wood. And there's not too much to worry about, but a lot of people have families, kids to take care of.
Yeah, I mean, we're worried about our friends and the family, obviously, and just friends and acquaintances, and just seeing what's happening in the world. Like, we're worried still.
But my point is, those people, for those people, the stakes are even higher to keep your mind sharp.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
So why not train now?
Yeah. So the point is, you will want to take steps to keep your brain healthy, to keep your brain active, so that you can help the people that need the help, right? And you can perform at your best at a time where it really does matter.
Right.
I think there's a temptation in sort of
wallowing
these times,
in it.
to just sort of wallow it and to shut down.
And that's fine too, to have that time to do it, but maybe set a time limit, set a time cap. Like, okay, I'm going to spend 30 minutes worrying today. I'm going to spend 30 minutes looking at the news. Like, we enjoy watching the press conferences.
Yeah. So New York State Governor
Cuomo.
Cuomo, who I didn't really know much about prior to this. I'm not big into politics, but politics aside, what he's done is I think a real justice and service to service is the word I'm looking for. A real service to Americans, and frankly anyone who wants to watch a compassionate and honest account of what's going on and how great the challenges are for all kinds of municipalities and states and governing bodies.
Yep.
I mean, we think about those close to us, These are people who have to think about millions of people, and all the moving pieces that connect to protect those people.
Right.
It's an incredibly intense and challenging occupation to have that rivals the challenges that the healthcare workers are facing and other essential workers. So that's all sort of context for why we derive a lot of comfort from seeing someone like this who's under just enormous, incomprehensible levels of stress and pressure speak in a calm, and compassionate voice about what's going on.
Right.
And it's such a refreshing contrast to the way the media presents stuff. The media typically tends to be very alarmist. They want catchy headlines. They want to trigger your fear instincts to make you glued to them, right? Click and go in and hold your attention. Whereas what Cuomo's doing, and I'm sure other leaders are, the leaders who are good at their jobs are doing, is something very different, which is expressing empathy, solidarity.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And confidence. And that's what we need right now. And to the extent that you can play that role among the people around you.
In your own friend groups,
exactly,
family circles.
You can be a part of that positive
force.
Influence, that positive force.
Yeah. And, we've talked about, we've done research on this, and it's an ongoing process with the avatar, is what we call it here. And assuming the role of your alter ego or your avatar or your, ought self, like the self that you, or your ideal self, the self that you want to be. And especially now, a really interesting activity would be to channel your avatar. First of all, choose one, right? And rely on it for sources of strength and comfort and
totally,
really pulling from those qualities that you've imagined your avatar to have, or maybe even been inspired by your actual role models. That could be a really great brain activity as well. And
I love it. And particularly when in those periods where you're feeling the crunch.
Exactly.
Right? For me right now, an easy avatar for me to choose would be Cuomo.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
Yeah.
Someone who's able to not get emotionally worked up and instead address problems, challenges day by day with a cool, collected mindset. Yeah, I love the idea of using an avatar for that.
Yeah, and I always wonder, like, when I see him lead, right, in the recent press conferences, is because that's really what we're basing this off of right now. Who is his avatar?
I know.
Like, I'm sure he talked about his
dad.
father a lot.
Yeah,
his brother too.
He's mentioned Winston Churchill several
right.
times. Winston Churchill, by the way, if you haven't looked up his background, this is another great way to distract your mind.
Yeah, and
not
sharpen.
Realign your mind.
Yes.
Read some biographies. Just you can go into Wikipedia and take a look at some famous people from the past, and just sort of understand what it is that got them famous. Some of the things that these people have accomplished, and
incredible.
The adversity that they had to overcome is really inspirational.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And just things that he was actually also I think he was a painter as well.
Oh, Winston Churchill?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Winston Churchill, definitely check out. He got kicked out of government, and then things were going really south, and so they called him back. And he set aside his ego and came back and basically saved Europe,
the world, too.
The world.
Yeah.
I think those are probably the avatars he looks to, right? People in the past who've truly accomplished unimaginable things.
Yeah, insurmountable
odds.
Challenges.
Yeah.
So that's a really good thing to do. And then I would also say, if you're tactile and you're kinesthetic and creative, I'm going to put that in quotes because it's different for everyone, doing things like maybe knitting and sewing, and there's tons of YouTube videos out there, like doing something with your hands, making arts and crafts,
Right.
baking that really gets you involved. And if you're concentrating on that, you're not concentrating on anything else.
Yeah.
But that sort
I
of helps
find those
focus
are like meditative almost, right?
Very much so. And
Yeah.
you can find your own sort of therapeutic hobby in that sense. But I remember, so when I was little, one of my favorite sweaters that I had, I think it was my favorite sweater. It was my fun sweater. So it was, I have to show it to you. I still
love
have
to
it.
see this.
Yeah, it's at my parents'. But it was a sweater that had the letters fun on it. But that's not what made it fun. My mom she would find these like trinkets at the toy shop, or probably the toy shop because they were little toys, and she would sew them on my sweater.
No way.
It was epic.
That's awesome.
Was my favorite sweater, and I would wear that with such pride and joy because I would be like, look at all of these things, and my friends would come up and we would like play.
You're like a walking Christmas tree.
I know, it was
Christmas
so
tree.
fun.
That's
so
awesome.
Being kind of like goofy and finding things that like you might enjoy, but like children that you know or your own children might enjoy.
Yeah, for the children, definitely watch the video that came out earlier this week, because that was very oriented towards kids.
Yeah.
And you may have kids, you may be living with kids.
You might be giving advice to your friends who
have kids. Yeah.
We're all Zoom calling nowadays, right?
Yeah.
So.
And kids are a terrific distraction.
Totally.
Terrific distraction.
Yeah.
And treating them as treasures that are enhancing your experience as opposed to obligations, I think can go a long way toward less stress.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the one other thing I want to share is, so you know how people are really big, some people are big proponents of making a vision board for the start of the year. So we're in April now. Why not make a vision board or a collage now and really allow your mind to just kind of travel and
I don't know what a vision board is.
So a vision board is basically a collage of your goals, hopes, dreams, aspirations. And the idea is to make one and really like meditate over it as you're doing it, as you're clipping the artwork, as you're, pasting it, as you're writing stuff on it.
I like that.
So that you meditate over it and your subconscious starts help like manifest it in real life.
It's a very introspective activity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So these kinds of like introspective exercises can really help sharpen your brain, but also give you some comfort and distract you in a positive way.
Yeah,
right?
I love that. Yeah, so I mean, at this point we've covered sort of finding stillness to give your brain space to operate the way it should operate.
Right.
Being active to give your brain intermittently throughout the day to give your brain the blood and oxygen it needs.
Finding an avatar.
Finding an avatar, someone who has, overcome great adversity and that you can look to and sort of become when you're feeling stressed or.
And you can have a different avatar. In fact, we would encourage you to have a different avatar for different situations. So a public speaking avatar, a comfort avatar,
In this case, it's a
chill out
overcome.
avatar?
No. I think it's just an avatar who has overcome
Adversity,
insurmountable odds. Yeah, something that was just very, very difficult to get through, and they got through it. I think would be a good avatar for this. And then finally, using the time for introspection and plotting. Eventually this will end.
Yeah.
Like everything, as a lot of people have been saying, this too shall pass. It will end. And when that happens, we're going to get back to our lives.
Yeah.
So this is a great opportunity to sort of help plan out what the rest of that looks like.
And these skills will come in handy when you do face other types of adversity that might be just specific to you, right? Getting fired from a job, or some not so great news, or I don't know, all these things that might
Throw you off.
the tracks.
Yeah, I mean, this is a whole
Missing
nother
the train. I don't know, just something.
a whole other sort of bucket that we won't discuss. But times like this are a great to press reset, and because everything is getting reset, you can also. This is an opportunity for you to reset your own life and turn a new page. So I think there's a lot.
There's a lot to think about.
Yeah, a lot to think about.
We have some more suggestions on the blog, in the blog article, of things you can do to, keep your brain sharp. One that I didn't mention on there was Sudoku.
Yeah,
or like
yeah.
crossword puzzles, right?
Lots
things
of
like
those
that.
things. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you be creative, find your own, and then
There's
let us
plenty
know.
out there. Yeah, we'd
in the
love to hear
comments.
what you guys come up with as
Yeah.
well, because
We can always add to the list, right?
yeah,
We're all in this
You're a
together.
lot bigger crowd than our two brains. So
Yeah,
I'm
and
sure
we're all
you
in
guys
this
can produce a
together.
lot of really thoughtful stuff.
Right. So we should just kind of like take a breather when we can, and it's okay to be freaked out. We're also freaked out, but we also have to remember that we need to do this for our mental health and for the mental health of the people that we love and who are around us too, right?
That's right.
All right. So we will see you next week for another lesson and a live stream, and hope you have a great weekend.
Yeah. We look forward to hearing how some of this goes for you, and we're always here to chat. So
All right.
looking forward to it.
Happy explearning,
Happy
everyone.
exploring it.